Introduction: A nation wrapped in mystery. Where did the Japanese people come from? It's a question that has puzzled historians, scientists, and storytellers for centuries. Unlike some countries with clear and documented beginnings, Japan's story is like a layered puzzle, part myth, part migration, and part mystery. Today, Japan is known for its neon-lit cities, samurai legends, bullet trains, and ancient temples. But if you peel back the layers of time, you'll find a far more fascinating story, one that stretches back tens of thousands of years, filled with hunters, farmers, seafarers, and even gods. In this video, we'll journey from the Ice Age to modern times, uncovering the real origins of Japan, a tale of myth, science, and survival. Stay with me, because the truth might surprise you. Chapter 1. What was Japan before people arrived? Long before people ever set foot on the Japanese islands, the land looked nothing like it does today. During the Ice Age, around 30,000 to 15,000 years ago, huge sheets of ice locked up much of the world's water. Sea levels dropped by over 100 meters, exposing vast stretches of land. In this period, Japan was not the isolated island chain we think of now. At times, natural land bridges connected it to the Asian mainland through what is today Korea and the northern regions of Siberia. Even when the seas rose and broke these connections, the distance across narrow straits was short enough that early humans could have made the journey using simple rafts. The land itself was wild and untamed. Dense forests, rivers, and fertile valleys stretched across the islands. Giant animals, now extinct, roamed alongside species still familiar today: mammoths, deer, wild boar, and bears. These animals likely attracted hunters and nomads from the mainland, providing food, fur, and bone tools. In other words, Japan was not yet a country but a natural frontier, waiting to be discovered and settled. It was a place shaped by ice, rising seas, and shifting landscapes, a blank canvas where the story of a new people would one day begin. Chapter 2. The First People, the Jomon. Over 14,000 years ago, Japan welcomed its first confirmed settlers, the Jomon people. Their arrival marked the true beginning of human life on the islands. The word Jomon means cord-marked, a reference to the rope-like patterns they pressed into their pottery. What's incredible is that Jomon pottery is among the oldest in the world, predating even the famous pottery of Mesopotamia and Egypt. These weren't just plain vessels, they were decorated with spirals, patterns, and designs, showing creativity long before written history. The Jomon lived mainly as hunters, gatherers, and fishermen. They built pit dwellings partly underground to keep warm during harsh winters. Their daily life revolved around nature, hunting deer and wild boar, gathering chestnuts and acorns, and fishing from rivers and coasts rich with shellfish. But survival wasn't their only focus. The Jomon showed a deep spiritual and artistic side. Archaeologists have uncovered mysterious clay figurines called dogu, with wide eyes and exaggerated features. Some believe they symbolized fertility, protection from illness, or connections to the spirit world. Though their exact meaning remains a mystery, they prove that the Jomon had imagination and ritual, not just survival instincts. For nearly 10,000 years, the Jomon shaped the cultural foundation of Japan, leaving behind art, traditions, and a sense of spirituality that still echoes in Japanese culture today. Chapter 3. A New Wave, the Yayoi Migration. Around 300 BCE, Japan experienced one of the greatest turning points in its history. A new wave of people crossed the sea from the Asian mainland, most likely from Korea and southern China. These were the Yayoi people, and they brought with them skills that would forever transform the islands. The most important of these was wet rice farming. Unlike hunting and gathering, rice agriculture demanded careful planning. Fields had to be flooded, irrigation channels dug, and planting cycles coordinated. This meant people could no longer live scattered in small groups. Instead, they built larger, permanent villages. With farming came food surpluses, population growth, and the beginnings of social classes. Some families controlled land and resources, while others worked for them, an early step toward organized society. The Yayoi also introduced metal tools and weapons made of bronze and iron. This boosted farming productivity, but it also changed warfare. Power and status now depended on who controlled the best weapons and the largest harvests. Genetically and physically, the Yayoi looked different from the older Jomon people. DNA evidence shows they were more closely related to populations in East Asia, while the Jomon carried more ancient hunter-gatherer ancestry. Over time, the two groups intermixed, blending cultures, traditions, and bloodlines. Together, this fusion of Jomon endurance and Yayoi innovation laid the foundation of the Japanese identity that would continue to evolve for centuries. Chapter 4: The Birth of Japan as a Nation. By the 3rd century CE, the Yayoi transformation had spread across Japan. Farming villages were no longer just small communities. They had grown into regional clans and small kingdoms. Leaders competed for land, rice, and power. Control of food supplies meant control of people, and alliances, or wars, decided who would rise and who would fall. Among these early kingdoms, one name stands out: Yamatai. Ancient Chinese records, written during the Wei dynasty, mention Yamatai and its ruler, a shaman queen called Himiko. She is described as a mysterious woman who did not marry, who rarely appeared in public, and who ruled through spiritual power. It was said that her rituals and magic kept her people united, while her brother handled the practical affairs of governance. Whether Himiko was a historical queen, a symbolic figure, or partly legend, she represents a turning point. For the first time, power in Japan was being centralized under a recognized authority rather than scattered among warring clans. This pattern, of rulers blending political control with spiritual or divine authority, would become a defining feature of Japanese leadership. From Yamatai, it is only a short step to the Yamato clan, which would later claim descent from the sun goddess Amaterasu and give birth to Japan's first emperors. In Himiko's shadowy rule, we see the earliest seeds of a united Japan, a land no longer just villages, but a nation beginning to take shape. Chapter 5: The Mythical Beginning, Descendants of the Gods. Now we step into the world where myth and history collide. According to Japan's most sacred legends, the islands were not formed by chance or by nature, but by the hands of two divine beings, Izanagi and Izanami. Standing on the floating bridge of heaven, they dipped a jeweled spear into the ocean below. As they lifted it, drops of water fell and hardened into the islands of Japan. With this act, the divine homeland was born. From these gods came generations of deities, but none was more important than Amaterasu, the radiant sun goddess. In Shinto, the native religion of Japan, Amaterasu represents light, purity, and life itself. Shrines across Japan still honor her, with the most sacred East Grand Shrine, dedicated entirely to her worship. But here's what makes this myth powerful. Japan's first emperors claimed to be direct descendants of Amaterasu. Through her bloodline, the imperial family was said to rule not only by human right, but by divine mandate. This belief gave their authority a sacred, unbroken legitimacy that no rival clan could challenge. Even today, Japan's imperial family is recognized as the oldest continuous monarchy in the world, its roots stretching back to these divine stories. So while archaeologists speak of the Jomon and the Yayoi, Japan's own traditions declare a different origin, a nation not just of people and migrations, but of gods and sacred inheritance. This myth became the glue that bound the Japanese together under one shared story of destiny. Chapter 6: Blending of Peoples and Cultures. By the 5th and 6th centuries, Japan was no longer just a land of scattered clans. It was a society in motion, shaped by both its ancient roots and new waves of influence. The old Jomon bloodlines had not vanished. They lived on, mixing with the Yayoi farmers and later migrants from Korea and China. This genetic and cultural blending slowly gave birth to what we recognize today as the Japanese identity. But people weren't the only thing crossing the seas. Ideas and technologies arrived too. From China, Japan gained writing systems, Confucian concepts of government, and advances in metallurgy. From Korea, Buddhism crossed into Japan, introducing not just a religion, but also art, architecture, and a new way of thinking about life and death. Yet Japan never became a simple copy of its neighbors. Instead, it developed a habit that would define its culture for centuries: borrowing, adapting, and transforming. Chinese characters were reshaped into Japan's unique writing system. Buddhism was blended with native Shinto beliefs, producing rituals and practices unlike anywhere else. Even political models inspired by China were modified to fit Japan's own traditions of clan-based rule. The result was a civilization that stood with one foot in the ancient hunter-gatherer past and the other in the sophisticated farming and statecraft of the mainland. Out of this fusion, Japan carved a distinct path, absorbing the best of the outside world, while never losing sight of its own uniqueness. Chapter 7. The Scientific Search for Origins. While myths tell one story and archaeology tells another, modern science has added a new layer of truth. Advances in DNA studies and archaeology reveal that the Japanese people are not descended from a single origin, but from a rich blend of different groups who arrived over thousands of years. The first group were the Jomon, the ancient hunter-gatherers who settled the islands more than 14,000 years ago. Their genetic footprint still survives, especially among populations in northern Japan and the Ainu people of Hokkaido. Then came the Yayoi, rice farmers who migrated from Korea and China around 300 BCE. They brought agriculture, metal tools, and social structures that changed everything. Over centuries, they mixed with the Jomon, slowly creating a new population. But the story didn't stop there. During the Kofun, 3rd–6th century CE, and Asuka periods, 6th to 8th century CE, new waves of migrants crossed from the mainland. They brought more advanced technologies, writing systems, and religious beliefs like Buddhism. Each wave left its mark, not only in DNA, but in language, culture, and tradition. Modern Japanese identity, then, is not the product of a single people, but a tapestry woven from many threads: hunter-gatherers, farmers, and later settlers. Science confirms what history suggests. Japan's origin is a story of blending, migration, and transformation. It's this complex mix that makes the Japanese people and their culture truly unique. Chapter 8. Why Japan's origins are unique. Japan's origin story stands out in world history because it is built on a paradox: isolation and connection at the same time. As an island nation, Japan naturally developed a world of its own. Surrounded by seas, it could nurture unique traditions, its own language, a native religion like Shinto, and cultural codes such as the warrior ethics that later became known as Bushido. Geography acted as a shield, protecting Japan from many of the invasions and cultural disruptions that swept across the Asian mainland. And yet, Japan was never fully cut off. From its earliest days, it absorbed waves of influence: rice farming from Korea, writing systems from China, Buddhism and Confucian ideals, even political structures and advanced metallurgy. Each influence reshaped the islands, but never erased their core identity. Instead of becoming a copy of its neighbors, Japan blended these foreign ideas into something uniquely its own. This balance, openness without losing identity, is what gave Japan its remarkable character. It could learn from others but also guard its independence. This is why Japan could modernize rapidly when it needed to, while still preserving traditions that stretch back thousands of years. So Japan's origins are not simply about who arrived first or who brought rice. They're about a delicate dance between being part of the wider world and standing apart from it. And that balance shaped the nation we know today, one that feels both deeply ancient and strikingly modern. Chapter 9. Legends versus Reality. So which version of Japan's origin should we believe? The myths of gods creating the islands, or the archaeologists' evidence of migrations, farming, and cultural change? The truth is, both matter. On one side, the mythological story, with Izanagi and Izanami creating the islands and Amaterasu giving divine authority to Japan's emperors, offered the people something science could not: a shared identity, a sacred purpose, and a belief that their land was unique and blessed. For centuries, this narrative bound the Japanese together under one unbroken line of emperors, giving legitimacy to rulers and stability to society. On the other side, archaeology and science show us the human reality. The struggles of the Jomon, the innovation of the Yayoi, and the blending of peoples across centuries reveal how survival, adaptation, and cultural exchange truly shaped Japan. This story may not be filled with gods and magic, but it is equally powerful because it shows resilience, creativity, and human progress. In the end, these two halves, the spiritual and the scientific, are not enemies but partners. One explains how the Japanese understood themselves, while the other explains how they came to be. Together, they weave a richer origin story. A nation born from both myth and migration, carrying a dual legacy that still defines Japan today. Chapter 10. The Legacy Today. Even today, the distant echoes of Japan's origins can still be felt in daily life. They are not just history locked in museums, they are living threads woven into modern Japan. The Jomon people, though long gone, continue to live within the DNA of modern Japanese, especially in northern regions like Hokkaido, where traces of their ancient hunter-gatherer heritage remain strongest. Their spirit of harmony with nature survives in Japan's deep respect for forests, rivers, and the seasons. The Yayoi farmers, who first brought rice to the islands, left behind a tradition that still defines the Japanese table. From simple bowls of steamed rice to elaborate sushi, rice remains not just food, but a cultural symbol of life and community. The imperial family, though now symbolic, continues to trace its lineage back to Amaterasu, the sun goddess. This makes Japan's monarchy the oldest continuous dynasty in the world, a living link between myth and reality. And across the country, Shinto shrines still stand, marked by red torii gates. Each gate whispers of the creation myths, reminding worshippers and visitors that Japan's origins are sacred as well as historical. Japan's beginning is not just a story of the past, it is a story still alive in its culture, politics, and identity. From ancient pottery to neon skylines, from sacred myths to cutting-edge technology, Japan carries its origin with it, proving that the past is never really gone, it simply evolves. Conclusion: a nation born of many stories. So where did the Japanese people come from? From ancient hunters who braved icy land bridges during the Ice Age, chasing wild animals into an untouched frontier. From farmers of the Yayoi era, who carried rice across the sea and transformed the land into organized villages and kingdoms. From myths of Izanagi, Izanami, and Amaterasu, gods and goddesses who stirred the ocean and gave divine purpose to the emperors of Japan. The truth is, Japan's origin is not one single tale. It is many stories woven together. One side rooted in archaeology, migration, and survival, the other rising from myth, spirit, and imagination. And perhaps this is why Japan has always fascinated the world. A nation born from both fact and legend, carrying a dual heritage that feels not only historical but almost magical. Even today, echoes of this origin live on, in rice fields, in Shinto shrines, in the unbroken line of emperors, and in the resilience of a culture that has blended the past with the present like no other. But now, I'll turn the question to you. Do you think myths matter more than science when it comes to shaping identity? Or should nations rely only on the evidence of DNA and archaeology? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into Japan's mysterious past, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more untold stories of nations, history, and culture.